The 3 things keeping men over 30 fat. Men over 30, if you're struggling to lose that stubborn belly fat, it's not your age, it's not your genetics, it's not your metabolism. It usually comes down to 3 simple things. And if you don't fix them, nothing changes. Sean here from Fit Fusion Brotherhood. I've owned a gym for 10 years. I've coached thousands of clients. And in today's video, I'm going to talk about 3 simple things that are keeping men over 30 fat. So if you're interested in some of these little lesser known things, not just talking about being sedentary or eating junk food, the stuff that we already know, we're going to talk about things that are a little bit more specific that make a huge difference. So before I get into the actual 3 things, I want to address one of the biggest misconceptions that men have once they get older. And that's that they're kind of worried about their metabolism slowing down. Now, here's the good news. Your metabolism doesn't really slow down until you hit the age of 65. Now, there are some exceptions. So if your metabolism does slow down, it's almost always self-inflicted. So what do I mean? The 3 things that I'll be talking about today are all branching off of the foundation that if you don't do these things, you're going to have a much more difficult time to lose that stubborn belly fat. So first and foremost, as we age, we tend to move less. This seems like such a simplistic, no big deal, obvious kind of thing, but it actually makes a huge difference. So one of the reasons that we think we're losing our metabolism or we're just really having a tough time to drop body fat is we just move a lot less as we get older, we get busier, we have an office job, we're sitting down a lot, you move less. And if you listen to any of my other videos before, you know that moving throughout the day is a very strong indicator of how many calories you're going to burn, which in turn leads to fat loss. And then the second one, this one you also have a lot of control over. It's the loss of muscle. Because if you're going to hurt your metabolism, one of the ways that you can do that is by losing muscle, which you don't want to do. Now, the one thing that is true is that when in your 30s, it's not as easy to build or maintain muscle, and it's actually a lot easier to lose it. So that's why you might be reminiscing about when you were in your early 20s and you're able to do what you want, and you're still able to kind of maintain that physique you have. When you're in your 30s, not so much, especially if you're moving less and you're not prioritizing muscle. So what ends up happening as you get older, your testosterone levels start to go down. So unless you're actively trying to build the muscle to maintain the muscle that you have, it's gonna be a really difficult time to build muscle. It's gonna be an easier time to lose fat, which in turn slows your metabolism down. So before I get into these 3 things, I really want you to emphasize those 2 things. So make sure you're not moving a lot less now in your 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, because that's gonna be such an easy fix and one of the main reasons you feel like your metabolism is slower. And then second, make sure you prioritize your strength training, because otherwise you're gonna lose the muscle, which makes it harder to lose fat, and also you're not gonna have the physique that you want. Okay, so number 1 is alcohol and social gatherings. I'm not telling you that you have to cut out alcohol or you have to stop going out. You absolutely can. It's just very important to understand how these things can contribute to you storing a lot of additional body fat and really struggling to lose it. So let's talk about it. Why is that the case? Let's talk about alcohol specifically. So alcohol, the number 1 reason why it's difficult to lose fat when you're drinking is because alcohol in itself has calories. Even if you choose one of the healthiest options or lowest calorie options, it's still going to be empty calories, especially if you're going out with your friends and you're having a good time and you're having more than a couple drinks. It really adds up. Also, when it comes to alcohol, it's going to make your recovery more difficult. So you're going to be able to not sleep as well. You're going to need longer rest between your workouts. And also it's going to affect your hormones. So it makes it easier to store fat and harder to build muscle. So if you're drinking regularly or somewhat regularly, it's almost impossible to stay very, very fit. Again, once in a while, it's no big deal, but it's also important to understand that these things do play a role. So one of the best things that you can do for this would just be choosing healthier or lower calorie options. So if you're someone who sticks to a rum and Coke, switch to a rum and Diet Coke, light beer instead of regular beer. Small switches like that can really make a big difference. And then the second part of this equation is the whole social gathering part. Of course, you want to be social. You want to spend time with friends and family. You might have to be going out from restaurants from time to time, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just about having a plan. I would say one of the biggest mistakes men make is they tend to think of their week as good versus bad days. So maybe they're really good Monday through Friday, Saturday's completely unhinged, and then Sunday's kind of 50-50, but they look at it like they had a really good week. Unfortunately, our body doesn't work that way. Our body looks at things in terms of total energy throughout the week, not good versus bad days. And it's much easier to be in a calorie surplus, so to ruin all of your progress in one day, compared to 5 or 6 good days is actually very common. So it's important to understand that. Now, what can you do to kind of offset this? A few things. Just like I said with the alcohol, you can make healthier choices when you're at your restaurant or whatever you're doing. You can stick to a lot of veggies, leaner protein, and then minimize the sauces, condiments, and extra fatty foods. You could also just be proactive and maybe get a really good workout in beforehand, get a lot of walks in, and lower your calorie intake before the social event. You could also manage the rest of your week appropriately as well. So it's all about having a plan here. If you're just being pretty good throughout the week, but then you have that 1 or 2 days on the weekend that goes completely off the rails, it's not a surprise that you're struggling to lose body fat. So number 1 on the list here is alcohol and social gatherings. Number 2, sleep and stress. As you get older, you have more responsibilities, you get busy, and it's very easy to see your sleep kind of take a seat on the back burner while you figure out other things. And then as a result, your stress becomes higher. And all of these things can directly and indirectly affect how your body's able to drop body fat. So the first thing, this one's kind of obvious, the less you sleep, the more it affects your hunger hormones and your willpower and all of these things that would contribute you to probably eating more and moving less. And studies have shown over and over and over again, there is a correlation between sleep and calorie intake. So you're much more likely to overeat if you're sleep deprived. Also, you have issues when it comes to other hormones like cortisol, which is your stress hormone, that makes it really difficult to lose body fat and much easier to hold body fat, also difficult to build muscle at the same time. So sleep and stress tend to work hand in hand. There is also that second part of the equation with the stress, that's just your day-to-day stress as well. Now, obviously there are some things that you can control and there are some things that you can't control, but it is important to understand just how important it is with regards to your overall health and fitness as well. And these two things work kind of hand in hand. So what can you do about this? Now, when it comes to sleep, it's really important just to kind of understand how important it is. You might not feel bad if you don't get a good night's sleep. You might feel fine. You might be one of those people who has the same amount of energy, but it is still affecting the way your body affects fat loss and physique in general. So the key, in my opinion, if possible, when it comes to sleep is consistency. So ideally, you want to be going to bed roughly the same time and waking up roughly the same time. Our bodies are really primed and benefits from our circadian rhythms, which is kind of when our body inherently knows when we're going to eat, when we're going to go to sleep, when we're going to wake up. And the more consistent these things are, the better we function, the more consistent our hormonal function is as well. So when it comes to sleep, really making sure that you're trying to be consistent with it can make a big difference. There are other things like reducing your caffeine intake, watching your screen time before bed, and making sure you're in a very good sleep conducive environment. And then of course, the second aspect of this when it comes to stress, not a therapist here, so I'm not going to be giving you some preachy stress advice. But one of the things that I like to focus on is really only being able to kind of put my energy towards things that I can control. If you can't control it, it's not worth stressing over. But at the end of the day, it's important to understand just how stress and sleep can impact your overall health and physique. It's one of those things where you might feel like you have everything else dialed in. You're just like, big deal, I'm not sleeping well, I'm stressed out all the time. Could be worse, but these things do have a big impact. So number 2, sleep and stress. And number 3, this one is by far the most common. I see it all the time, and it's inconsistency. You can probably relate to this. How many times have you been dialed in for weeks to only fall off? We got to understand that momentum works both ways. When you have positive momentum going, it feels like you're unstoppable. And then maybe you have one bad day, one bad night, you start to generate a little bit of momentum, and then once again, that starts to snowball and you become very difficult to get back into the routine of things. And this is something that is by far the most important thing to address and understand, because fat loss, nutrition, fitness is a lifestyle. It's something that you want to be long-term and something that you want to be sustainable. So anytime you're about to start any sort of program, whether it's a workout program or nutrition program, ask yourself, can I see myself doing this long-term? If the answer is yes, the next question should be, what am I going to do when, not if, my motivation fades? What are some contingency plans that I'm going to have after I have a bad day or a bad weekend? Because the ability to get back on track after maybe a slip up or two is far more important than your actual plan itself. Because at the end of the day, it's not about perfection. A lot of guys out there are all out, wanting to push as hard as you possibly can, but then what ends up happening is you lose some momentum and you go right back to where you started. So consistency beats perfection all day, every day. And then it really comes down to having a foundation for yourself, meaning what things can you make that are absolutely non-negotiable. So it could be a minimum of 3 strength training days per week. So what do? You get your calendar. Ideally, if you can have a day and time every single week that you can kind of assort or allocate to that strength training workout, you want to make it as consistent as possible rather than just winging it. So same thing with your nutrition or even steps. If you're tracking your steps, how many steps are you absolutely committed to doing every single day? Make it non-negotiable. For nutrition, have a plan. Don't wing it. Be proactive, because if you wing it, if you're reactive, things get crazy. Things go out of hand, and then all of a sudden you're resorting back to old habits. Okay, so it doesn't have to be overly ambitious. It can be conservative, but it has to be something that's sustainable, and it has to be something that's non-negotiable, because relying on motivation is a surefire way to fail. So the last one and the most important thing here is inconsistency. Obviously, the fittest guys I know are super consistent. They're not always the ones that train the hardest or eat the cleanest. They just do it all the time. So this might be the number one thing that you need to focus on, because it is something that we see all the time, and it's really the biggest thing holding most guys back. So there you have it, guys. Perfect time to do an internal audit. Don't worry about your carb cycling, your eating before bed, your intermittent fasting, all these fancy things. Really ask yourself these 3 questions. Are these things holding you back? Number 1, sleep and stress. Number 2, alcohol, social gatherings. And number 3, the inability to stay consistent. If any of those things apply to you, try to really emphasize and prioritize those before doing anything else. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do like videos like this, do us a huge favor, like, comment, and subscribe. See you in the next one.